Let's talk about these upcoming concerts in Curitiba and São Paulo. How excited are you to return to Brazil this time, not being part of a festival?
Oh man, very excited. See a lot of fans online that want kind of some deeper cuts and some, more interesting set list. So coming and doing our own shows allows us to kind of play some unique songs and play some things that you're not going to hear, at a festival when you don't have a lot of time. And it's usually, those shows are geared towards a larger audience. So gonna really kind of spread our wings on the set list, make people happy that have been fans for a long time.
Oh, that's great news. And before talking about the shows themselves, I'd like to touch on your popularity here in my country. In Spotify, São Paulo is the third city that listens to Avenged Sevenfold the most in the world. You have always been very massive here. I know it's hard to explain, but in your opinion, of course, why do you think the Brazilian audience has connected so much with your music?
Because they're very smart. No, just kidding. There's certain little spots in the world that seem to really appreciate aggressive music. They appreciate sort of the over-the-top theatrics of certain bands. If you look at Iron Maiden and other bands from the metal genre, it just seems like it's like through the heritage and through their bloodline, they're kind of passed down these artists. And I think we in some ways, we kind of fit with a little bit of that, even though we do our, some other things a little differently. I think Brazil just seems to respond to the aggression and the melody and just sort of what we're saying. And I think it has to do with the parents and the grandparents and just passing down these sorts of bands. It has to do something with that because, you see adults, you see them bringing their kids to these shows, you see just many generations. And I think it's just a more cultural sort of family affair when you're talking about Brazil than in some other parts of the world.
Absolutely. And since I mentioned the top cities on Spotify, and just out of curiosity, something really crazy is your popularity in Indonesia. I mentioned São Paulo at top 3, but if you expand to the top 5 cities, 4 are in Indonesia. I ask you the same question. Why do you think the Indonesian audience has connected so much with your music? Because it's kind of specific, right?
Yeah, the Indonesia thing is a little different. We've been going there a long time, and I think there was this, from what I understand, there was this sort of big internet cafe boom in the early 2000s. And that particular White album, the self-titled album there, seemed to be on repeat in those internet cafes. So a lot of people there kind of associate Avenged Sevenfold with growing up and their childhood. And that particular market has really, that particular group of people has really come online in the last 20 years or so. And we just kind of happen to be in the right place at the right time, and they really love Avenged Sevenfold over there. It's wild. We go to Indonesia, and I feel like a pop star. I'm like, this is weird. I don't know if I like it or not. So Indonesia is interesting. I think Brazil, places like Portugal, Spain, Mexico, they kind of have that different feeling though, where it's it's more deeply embedded in the society. And so, yeah, all these places are a little different, but definitely Indonesia is a top place for us.
Absolutely. And we can say that Avenged Sevenfold is a global band because many American artists, American bands, they don't seem to be worried about building a fan base in the whole world. The focus are always North America, maybe Europe, but with Avenged Sevenfold, I feel that's different. There's a different concern about other parts of the world. Am I right?
Yeah, I think if you only worry about Western Europe and America, you kind of live and die by the trends that are happening there. You can only tour so much. People in America and Western Europe get a lot of shows. So they might go to 4 or 5 shows a week and they're seeing every band. And so a thing for us is getting to places that don't get as many concerts. Or, this last tour we did in Europe was all Eastern Europe, Slovenia, Lithuania, Greece, Turkey. We're playing so many places that a lot of bands from America, they don't even venture over there. And it's always been like a main concern to us. Number one, we have a really good time traveling to places that are unique. Number two, we like playing for new people. And number three, we just see it as, being a global band is something that we've kind of learned from, the best. Like I'd say Iron Maiden and Metallica have done a really good job of spreading their wings and not necessarily worrying too much about North America.
Talking again about the concerts in Brazil, we'll have some opening acts, and I'd like to talk about one specifically because Mr. Bungle is coming with you guys, and I know you guys really like them. And how happy are you to be able to bring one of your favorite bands to play with you at these shows?
I mean, so happy. I'm surprised. I'm so happy they did it. I know they don't do a lot. Mr. Bungle was one of those artists that really were a major part of me and the Rev and Sinister Gates, all of our childhood growing up. And so to be able to go on tour with those guys and Mike Patton, it's a dream come true, because not only take them out there, but we want to introduce them to our audience, and I think getting them in front of that many people is a really cool thing. And I think, hopefully our audience can go down the rabbit hole of Mr. Bungle and kind of see where we got our influence and kind of get the joy out of that band that we've always had. It's amazing.
That's great. And since you mentioned that you like Mr. Bungle, Jimmy liked, Brian likes, to what extent has Mr. Bungle's career influenced Avenged Sevenfold, especially in recent years on their most recent albums?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the coolest things they ever did was put out their self-titled record and then put out Disco Volante. I think it's the most bizarre, crazy record ever. I mean, I would love to hand in a record like that to a record label, like where they're just like, what do we do with this? This is a joke. What I love about them is like when they were putting out records, all of their records were so unique that you can never predict where they were going to go. It's just true art. They're such great musicians. They can kind of do whatever they want. That's something that more artists should take notice of. Like if you want to be boring, then go be boring. But if you want to be unique, don't worry about your past success and let that dictate how unique you're going to be. And I think Mr. Bungle has done an amazing job. Even Faith No More, if we're talking about Patton, all of his projects are just always absolutely unique, and you can tell they're not doing it for any other reason other than to make crazy art.
And returning to talk about Brazil, you were here last year headlining Rock in Rio. What memories do you have of that specific show?
If I was going to go through like the quickest memories, all the fans in front of the hotel. I remember our kids were there. They couldn't believe it. The fans were singing our music all night. I remember not sleeping the night before the show. Definitely a little bit of just a lot of buildup and anxiety. I remember walking on that stage and just feeling total love from that audience. I couldn't believe that many people in the country knew who we were or even would come to one of our shows. I remember going to Travis Scott a couple nights before. It was really fun. I remember, just so many things. I remember the food. I remember the pool. I remember, the gym. Just a lot of really great memories. And it reminded me of like how much we missed being down in South America. Just really, just such a great place. I love the weather. I love the vibe. I love the people. Everyone's so nice.
That's great. And at Rock in Rio, it was impressive that the audience sang along even to the newest songs. I go to a lot of shows and I can tell you that this is rare. It's not common. Is this also something that impresses you when it happens, or did you expect that perhaps at this point in your career, Avenged Sevenfold will become seen as a legacy act, nostalgic act, or something like that?
Listen, sometimes we go to places and they don't sing the new record, and then sometimes they do. It's always nice when they do. Again, it seems to be places like Indonesia and Brazil and Mexico, and they know the new stuff. And I'm not going to say that we're the first to do this. Most of the bands that came before us settle into some sort of routine after a while. And to me, that gets really boring. I don't think the fans have to learn new stuff if you're going to do kind of the same thing. We expect there to be audiences that only like the new stuff, and there's going to be audiences that only like the old stuff, and there's going to be some audience that loves it all. Again, I can't predict how people are going to react to things. I think 90% of music for most people is nostalgia, right? Most people love the shit they listened to when they were growing up, and it's hard for them to look at it from a a kind of a higher perspective and go, is this really good, or did I just like it because I grew up with this? And sometimes I listen to records that I love and go, man, I would never listen to this today, but I love it, right? And so we just want to make sure we don't fall into any traps. And to me, the biggest trap is trying to chase old success by doing different versions of the old thing. So when we do get an audience that knows it all, that's very fulfilling, obviously, but we don't necessarily expect it because music has a long lineage of people not liking the new shit.
Yeah, absolutely. And since we're discussing Rock in Rio, I can guarantee you were the youngest band to headline a day focused on rock and heavy metal at Rock in Rio. And a funny thing, you have been around for over 25 years. But anyway, how important is it for you to be a headlining act at festivals that are not normally very open to giving this space to young bands?
It's been very important. If you actually break down what we did in Eastern Europe recently, the main point was to go into places that maybe were not very big and to force ourselves into some of those headlining spots and kind of show the people in those countries who we are and what we bring to the table. And hopefully that brings in a whole other group of bands that kind of came up with us or are coming up after us. So even like in Prague, to be honest, the promoter didn't think we were big enough to headline it. And we did, and it sold out. And it was a big, but you have to take a swing sometimes, right? You have to be able to go up there and have a possible failure. So many people in this industry are so worried about protecting like everything that they don't take those swings. And I think if you're just being honest with yourself and just saying, hey, listen, this might not work and it might work, don't get cocky if it works, but don't be disappointed if it doesn't, just kind of keep it focused on what you're trying to accomplish. There's a bunch of bands coming up. You've got Ghost, you've got Bring Me the Horizon, you got Sleep Token now, you got Bad Omens, you got Spirit Box, you got all these things that are coming up behind us, and they need to be able to take swings as well. And if we can't take a swing, then they're not going to be able to take a swing. So metal's in a really good spot right now. I think there's a lot of people listening to a lot of newer bands. And so we just got to keep doing what we do and not being worried about what's popular at the moment and just kind of trying to knock it out of the park if we do get a chance.
And since you mentioned that you guys did that stuff before of forcing yourselves to the headlining spot, over a decade ago, many fans criticized Download Festival for having you as headliners. Since then, how do you think you guys have changed the general audience's perception of the band? Do you think this audience is more accepting of the idea of having younger bands as headliners, or do you still believe there is resistance to Avenged Sevenfold and other young bands like Ghost, Sleep Token, and etc.?
Yeah, I think we've been around long enough now where we don't really get as much backlash, and I saw there was backlash for like Sleep Token, and I'm sure when Ghost headlines at some point, or there'll be some sort of backlash. I mean, now that I'm older and I look at it, it's just like who cares? Of course, people are going to be mad about everything. But when you're living it and you're in the middle of it, it's like, oh, this is important. Like, we got to go, do this certain thing. I think the band, and we've changed a lot. I mean, if you look at our first show at Download to our second, to our third headlining, the band has completely changed what we want to put out there. When we first headlined, we wanted to have all the explosives and we wanted to have all the fire and all, almost like, well, if you don't like the band, at least there's a really good show. And since then, we've kind of taken the approach of something more methodical. There's bands like Tool and certain groups that we kind of love. There's a vibe happening, and it's and you can't get that vibe anywhere else. And so I think there's just a maturing process that happens. When you're dealing with fans, the older generation's always going to have a problem with something. And if they're, habitually online, they're going to bitch and complain about shit. Who really cares? Just go do your show. Your audience is going to be there. They're going to love it. And they're going to be the ones that are coming to the future years. So that kind of stuff, it did open the door though, because listen, we headlined, and then now there's a lot of newer, younger bands that are getting shots for sure.
And about the not worrying about it, I must say an album like Life is But a Dream, it serves as proof that you're not worried about people will think. And it's a very brave and experimental album. And 2 years after the release of this album, how do you see today being a brave album, experimental album, and the risks that you guys have taken about releasing that album specifically?
I don't think any of that stuff weighs on me at all. I think it weighs on other people more than it weighs in the band. I think like it's healthy for us to be kind of oblivious to it, because when we wrote that record, every one of our records, I think, served a really cool purpose at the time. I definitely think it's funny. There's those moments where you go and like we're playing in Greece, right? And there's, I think it was like 10 or 12,000 people. And I'm like looking at these faces and I'm thinking, I just wonder what those people thought when the first time they put on Life Is But a Dream. It's kind of funny to me, like I'm like, I get more of a kick out of it than anything, because I mean, we totally back it. We love it. We think it's great. I think those people can either go on a journey and learn to like it, or they loved it off the bat, or they'll never put it on again. But the idea that we have some sort of like control over our art and we can put it out there and we can like affect people in that way is just kind of funny to me. It's like, it can't be that serious, right? It's like if someone makes a painting and you're like, oh, I don't like that, but I like that. Like, the artist should do what they want to do. We don't let it weigh on us as much as it probably weighs on other people.
And in a recent interview, you said that there's nothing worse than when people are trying to box you in and want to write the same music you wrote when you were in high school, 20 years old. We know that many bands follow this path, but what keeps you motivated to not do that?
I think melodically, it's something that that doesn't get brought up a lot in music. And like, I've been really interested lately in the usage of unique melody. And when you've got unique melody, a super square riff, right? And then so like when we start thinking about music going forward, and we've been like, even started with the stage and with Life Is But a Dream, we're really playing around tonally with things that really interest us and like kind of bend our ear and make us feel something. And so if you can keep chasing something and making you feel something, the thing you already did isn't going to make you feel super different, right? Because you've already done it. And if you're playing in those modes a lot, and you're playing, riffs in 4/4, and you're kind of like doing transitions the way you used to do it, you're going to sit there with your buddies and you're writing music and you're not going to feel anything, because you've done it a million times. And so wherever we like venture into something that's very unique tonally or riff wise, or the way we can arrange something, and we get excited, then we go, okay, now we've got something to kind of go off of. Let's keep chasing that feeling, and then we'll put it out. That's what keeps us going back, right? It's like that chase of like, how can I make myself feel a feeling that I've never felt, or that feels really crazy or really good or really unique? And I guess that's the only way I can put it. And I don't know how to get there other than to keep pushing the limits outside of what I'm comfortable with. So that's what keeps us inspired. Just finding new things to make us feel weird.
And this year marks 10 years since Brooks joined the band. I was watching an old interview from 2003 where you were asked about your dream band, your dream lineup. You mentioned, I guess, Flea on bass, John Petrucci on guitar, and Brooks himself on drums, like more than 20 years ago. It's incredible. What is it like to be able to work with the drummer from your dream band nowadays?
Yeah, I mean, Brooks is he's one of those guys you never have to worry about, right? Like, you could be writing parts and doing things and you're like, we know Brooks is gonna bring a bunch of different tools to the table here, and that's really a nice feeling, right? It was like the Rev, like you never had to worry about the rhythm section of what you were kind of creating. And when you get in there and work with him, he's got this toolbox that doesn't just come from metal, it comes from every genre of music that he's ever played, which is like everything. And so, if you're playing a riff or writing a song, he can give you so many options, and that's just a complete like pleasure to have, because it's one less thing you have to worry about, and he's going to nail it every night live, and he's going to nail it in the studio, and he's a really easy guy to get along with. It's like the perfect person to be dealing with, right? And he has no ego, so it's amazing. It's really truly amazing.
At the same time, to what extent do you miss Jimmy's presence, specifically in the band?
Yeah, I mean, in the band, you miss him because we did speak the same language in a way that you can you can only speak if you grow up together, listening to the same things, having the same references, having the same sort of out of band experiences. I mean, there's something there where you can know what each other are thinking or saying without saying it. And that's something that, will never be replaced. And so, yeah, it's one of those things where, and he was such a unique writer. I would love to know, on this journey that we've taken, I would love to know where his head would be at this point, right? It would be such another great asset to have, which was always when you kind of come to a hard point or a wall and you're kind of stuck on something. It's great to have that third guy that he's kind of running off over here. So that's all stuff that we'll never get back. And obviously grateful for the time that we did have with him.
And you kind of predicted my next question, because I know it's difficult to do this kind of imagination exercise, but where do you think the band would be today with Jimmy, artistically speaking?
I would have to imagine there would be a few more brilliant songs. I think the idea of what we're trying to accomplish would be the same, because that was kind of always driven by me in a way, or me and Brian and Zach, and kind of figuring out where we're going to go. But once we got that going, I think there would be some added brilliance to what we've done. And then I think there would be a couple extra things that he would have brought to the table per record that would just be things I wouldn't have thought of, right? So I would love to know what those are, but we can only imagine.
The emotions surrounding the recent Ozzy Osbourne's death certainly made many artists think about the legacy they would like to leave with their work. What legacy would you like to leave with Avenged Sevenfold?
Legacy meant a lot to me when I was younger. And the older I get, my worldview is a lot different than it was. I really honestly think in 100 years, very few people will even know who we were or care. In 200 years, it'll be even less. 300 years, this whole planet will be completely reshaped with a bunch of other humans that are doing other shit, right? If we make it that long. I think musically, it makes me go inward more. Obviously, as a human being, I think Ozzy was very gracious with his time, and they were always bringing up newer artists. They helped us with Ozfest, back in the day. There's a lot to learn from Ozzy, and I met him and knew him a little bit. He was a guy that was very giving with his time and very wonderful to be around. He also seemed to really take care of his family and be a good family man on the back end, right? And then musically, it's just not that important. And I think you have to feel that way, because if you feel too precious about your art, then I feel like you might try to steer it too much. I think Avenged Sevenfold just has to be a complete reflection of the human experience. And for as ever long as people care about the band, it just is what it is. And everyone's going to be on doing their own thing with their new artists and their new music and their new this and that within a couple hundred years anyways. So I don't really care at this point, to be honest. I used to care a lot. If you would ask me that question 15 years ago, I would have cared. But now it's just about freedom and enjoying our life while we're here.
And to conclude, we're going to do a short discography commentary section. So I'd like a quick statement from you about each of the studio albums. Let's start, obviously, with Sounding the Seventh Trumpet. How do you see that album today?
A bunch of kids that had some good ambition, didn't know any better, and we decided we were going to take on the world. And we knew nothing about studio tricks. We knew nothing about production. And I think it's a great first start for kids in high school.
What about Waking the Fallen?
Waking the Fallen, huge step up. The vocal melodies improved, the riffs improved, the production improved. Great all-around record. Is very serious, not a lot of goofy parts. Very serious and a cool metalcore staple, in my opinion.
Great. And what about City of Evil?
It's like a bullet train to nowhere. It's got some huge songs on it. Some choruses that we didn't know what to do with. We could have made better songs looking back on it. I always think of that record as being great because of all the pieces, not the individual part. Because of the madness and the mayhem being thrown on it, it makes it really cool. It makes it a fun listen. And it was pretty much done because we didn't know any better.
Yes. And what about the self-titled?
Self-titled to me has some huge songs on it. It's the Rev record, in my opinion. I think there's some big misses on that record. I think, and there's some major wins on that record. It's still one of our biggest selling records. Musically, I think it has some of our not greatest stuff and some of our greatest stuff.
And what about Nightmare?
Nightmare, super solid record, obviously overshadowed by the death of the Rev. Portnoy coming in did an incredible job. I feel this is the point in our career where we could have gone a little too samey. I think Nightmare was that one record that coalesced all the sounds from before and made a sound, but it didn't feel like it was breaking new ground to me. This was a point in our career where we could have either got really bored and started making a bunch of records like Nightmare, but I feel like we nailed what we were trying to nail.
Yes. And Hail to the King.
Hail to the King was a complete, total shift of reaction to almost falling into the trap of what Nightmare could have been over and over. I think Hail to the King cuts a little too close to the bone of what we were trying to do, but it also kind of proved a point in a way, which was, hey, we can make a song that's going to be our biggest songs, and they're simple, and they're not far out of the box. They're like in a box, and Hail to the King went on to be, one of our biggest records and songs, and still is to this day. I think the blues aspect of it keeps it serious, which the White Album wasn't as much, and so I think that's kind of cool, and we learned a lot songwriting-wise by dissecting a lot of other bands' music during that time.
And then we have The Stage.
A magnum opus. It's like such a rad record. It's not an easy first listen. Putting something like Sunny Disposition is a tough third song. Long, unique. The vocal melody started changing at this point. We started really experimenting with the way we were writing vocal melodies. I think this record will go down as one of our most slept on and best records.
And, of course, Life is But a Dream.
Just a shot out of a cannon. It's like every aspect, from the melodies to the transitions to the riffs, everything had to be put on overdrive and just a sporadic, sprawling, look into existentialism, Life is absurd. Everything we do, the fact that we're here is absurd. And so that called for an absurd record, whether you're talking about the lyrics, the transitions, the music, all of it.
That's it.